Shavuot Tov Rabotai, we're continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Maasrot. We're up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilun Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai ben Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam beGan Eden. Amen. The Mishnah now returns to this topic of a courtyard setting, the Maaser obligation for produce that comes into it, so that once it comes into the courtyard, it can no longer be eaten even as a snack without separating Maasrot. We spoke about this in chapter 2, Mishnah 2 of this Masechet. The Mishnah says, "Hama'avir tenim b'chatzro liktzot." If someone carries figs through his courtyard on his way to dry them, which Mefarshim explain, he passed through his courtyard to reach the place where he spreads out the figs in the sun to dry. Banav ubnei beto ochlim ufturin. His children and the other members of his household may eat them as a snack, and they are exempt from separating maasrot before they eat, because since these figs are going to be dried, they are not yet fully processed, like we spoke about in chapter 1, Mishnah 8, for when dried figs are considered finished. They may therefore be eaten as a snack despite having been brought into the owner's courtyard, because the Mefarshim explain a courtyard does not set the maaser obligation for produce that has not yet been fully processed, similar to the halakha for teruma according to the view of the Chachamim in chapter 2 Mishnah 4, and similar according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda chapter 2 Mishnah 5. Now the Rab points out the Mishnah is very specific. It says that the owner's sons and members of his household may eat, which implies that the owner himself cannot eat. And then the Vilshim explain, once figs have been brought into the courtyard, they may be eaten as a snack only if it's clear that they are still going to be dried. Since the owner said he was going to dry them, and his children and family members have no control over the figs and cannot change the decision, they may eat them anywhere. However, the owner can always change his mind and decide to dry them, which will mean that now all the figs are completely processed. So if people see him eating figs in the courtyard, they may suspect him of changing his mind and eating finished figs without separating maasrot. So for this reason, the rabbis decreed that the owner can snack on these figs only in the place where they are being dried, whereas the children and other members of the household can eat it anywhere in the court, anywhere really, even in the courtyard. Now, as an introduction to the continuation of the Mishnah, the Mefarshim explain, workers who help carry the figs to the drying place are not entitled to eat them from them by Torah law, which we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 7, that the Torah gives a hired worker the right to eat from the unprocessed produce that he's working with. However, this halakha applies only to a work activity that's being done to finish the processing. But carrying figs from one place to another is not such an activity, and therefore these workers have no right to eat them by Torah law. Nevertheless, the owner, if he wants them, Vilshim explain, can allow them to eat either as part of their wages or as an extra benefit. So the Mishnah now is going to explain when these workers can eat from the figs without separating maasrot and when it's not allowed. Hapolim she'imo, the workers who are with him, meaning the workers who help him carry the figs to the place where they will be dried, are subject to the following rule. Bisman she'en alav mizunot, when they do not have a right to get food from him as part of their wages, and he allows them to take some figs as a gift, meaning when he hired them, he did not agree to give them meals as part of their wages, but while they were carrying the figs, he told them to take some. Ochlin uftuin, they may eat the figs as a snack, and they are exempt from separating maasrot before they eat. And the reason is because a gift does not set the maaser obligation for produce the way a sale does, like we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 2. Aval, im yesh lahem alav mizunot, if they have a right to get food from him as part of their wages, meals, hare'elu lo yochelu, then they may not eat the figs without first separating maasrot, because in this case, the figs are a payment to the workers. They are therefore considered to have been bought by them in exchange for their work, and therefore this sale sets the maaser obligation for them and prohibits them from being eaten before separating maasrot, like we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 7. Now, although these figs are not yet fully processed, this is true only for the figs that still belong to the owner, because since he is planning to dry the entire batch of figs, even those that he snacks on without drying are considered unfinished. However, the figs that are bought by the workers to their work are no longer part of that batch, because they now belong to the workers. Since the workers plan to eat them as they are now and not dry them, they are now considered fully processed. Therefore, the maaser obligations become set through the sale, and they may not be eaten as a snack. And that is in Rabotai Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Bet now continues teaching when workers may eat from figs from which maaser has not yet been separated, because we just said in the Mishnah, we dealt with eating figs being brought in from the field to a courtyard to the drying place. Now this Mishnah is going to deal with eating figs that are still in the field. Like in the previous Mishnah, this Mishnah is going to deal with the case where the workers were not entitled to eat by Torah law. Because again, we explained, the Torah allows workers to eat fruit from a tree they are working on only when they are picking the fruit. The Mishnah now is going to speak of a case where they were not picking the fruits, but working to improve the trees. For example, by hoeing the ground underneath. So the Mishnah says, Hamotzi po'alav lasadeh. If someone takes his workers out to work in the field on his fig trees and they want to snack on the figs, the halacha is like this. When they do not have the right to get food from the owner as part of their wages, but he allows them to take some figs anyways as a gift, they may eat the figs as a snack and they're exempt from separating Maasrot before eating, because a gift does not set the Maaseh obligation for produce like we just said in Mishnah Aleph. But if the workers do have the right to get food from them as part of their wages, then the figs they eat are considered to have been bought by them. That sets the Maaseh obligation like we learned in Mishnah Aleph. Therefore, they may not eat without separating Maasrot. They may eat without separating Maasrot only in the following way. They may pick and eat one fig at a time from the fig tree, meaning they can pick one fig at a time and eat it, and then another one and eat it. Because selling produce does not set its Maaseh obligation unless it has been processed, and one fruit by itself is not considered processed. However, the Mefarshim explain they cannot take two at a time and eat them because the rabbis treated two fruits together as a small pile. That pile would be considered processed enough to allow the sale of these fruits to set their Maaseh obligation, like we learned in chapter 2, Mishnah 5. But in Mishnah Aleph, where the figs were brought through the courtyard on the way to the drying place, the workers cannot even eat them one by one if it's part of their wage. And the reason for this is because two Maaseh setting things happened to these figs in the first Mishnah. First, they entered the courtyard and then they were sold to the workers. Although neither of the factors on their own is enough to set the obligation for unfinished produce, when both of them happened together, the rabbis were stricter and they considered the produce set for Maasrot. However, in our Mishnah, the fruits are still in the field. They have not come through the courtyard. Therefore, the only thing that can set the Maaseh obligation is that they were sold, and that itself is not good enough to work for unfinished fruits. It cannot set the obligation for unfinished fruits. Aval, lo min asal, v'lo min akupa, v'lo min hamuktzeh, but they may not eat even one fig at a time from a basket of figs, or from a box of figs, or from a pile of figs, because once the figs have been combined, they're considered processed enough for the sale to prohibit them being eaten even as a snack. And that is in Abu Taib today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.